I'd like to call this regular scheduled board meeting for Oscoda Township order for August 26th. If we could begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Cummings?
Here.
Ms. McGuire?
Here.
Mr. Spencer?
Here.
Mr. Taser?
Present.
Mr. Sutton here. Mr. Wishbarth? Mr. Palmer?
Here. Next is the approval of the agenda or additions. Do we have any additions? I believe Ms. McGuire had something she wanted to add.
Yeah. I need to add to the list BSNA administrative change request.
Okay, we'll put that on as other number 14.
What is 13?
Pardon?
Bill?
14.
Yeah, the interim
14.
Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the other list. There's 12. Sorry, the one above. Never mind. Thank you.
Can I get a motion to approve the agenda with the addition?
I would make a motion to approve the agenda with the addition of the BSNA admin change as other number 14.
Support. Motion by Mr. Sutton, support by Mr. Spencer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Taser?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Palmer?
Yes. We have an agenda. Next on our agenda is a public hearing for truth in taxation. Can I get a motion to go into the public hearing?
I move that we go into public hearing for truth and taxation.
Support.
Roll call, please.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Taser?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, we are now in public hearing. We have our esteemed former assessor here with us. If you'd like to step over there and give us a brief overview of what we're doing here.
Okay. Good evening. The purpose of this truth and taxation hearing is to fulfill the requirements of NCL 211.24E of the general property tax. A simplified explanation of this law is that a truth and taxation hearing is required if the current levy of operating millage, excluding new construction, produces more tax dollars than last year's actual levy, excluding losses. Without this hearing, the operating millage rate would be reduced from 4.6908 to 4.4652. The public notice in the paper referred to the difference between the reduced millage rate without a hearing and the authorized millage rate with this hearing. I have reviewed the previous millage rate documents. The proposed millage rate is the same as what has been levied for the last 13 years. If the board approves the resolution and adopts a millage rate of 4.6908, it will result in an additional operating revenue of $81,776. The estimated tax bill on average would increase $10.26. I believe I had submitted with the documentation for the board meeting some other calculations pertaining to all this information.
Yes, thank you. And this is something we go through every year. This isn't new. This time in the public hearing, if there's anyone that would like to ask a question from the audience, anyone from the public have a question on this issue, we'll try and answer it. If not, board members have any questions?
No.
No. No. In that case, I would take a motion to come out of the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to come out of public hearing.
Support. Cummings.
Roll call, please.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Taser?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, we are now out of public hearing. First one. Next up is the second public hearing, the Corridor Improvement Authority. I need a motion to go into the public hearing for this.
I would move that we go into public hearing for the Corridor Improvement Authority.
Support Cummings.
Was there a second?
Yes, support Cummings. Thank you. Sorry. I'll speak louder.
We have a motion by Mr. Spencer, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call, please.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Taser?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, we are now in public hearing. Our professional planner is here, Mr. John Iacangeli. You want to give us a little rundown on what we're doing here tonight?
Yes, I can, Mr. Supervisor and members of the board. Tonight's the statutory public hearing regarding the establishment of a Corridor Improvement Authority, which would, if enacted 60 days after tonight's meeting, would include the US 23 corridor from the southern municipal boundary with Oscoda Township, and would extend north along 23 to a property just north of Kmart, which is owned by the Church of Christ. That's on the west side, and on the east side, it would be the Red Barn storage property. It would also extend along F41 from US 23 and include all of the properties with frontage on F41 up to Van Etten Dam Road. The number of properties per the Iosco County GIS is 364 properties would be in the Corridor Improvement Authority. The Corridor Improvement Authority is established under Act 57 of 2018, Part 6. It operates much the same way as the Downtown Development Authority, and I know that years ago the township had a DDA. The authority is appointed by the trustees. It includes the chief executive officer of the township, plus either 5 or up to 9 other members, and one of those members needs to be a resident that resides within the corridor. It's advised that the majority of the board consist of property owners or business owners that are within the CIA boundary area. The Corridor Improvement Authority does not have the authority statutorily to levy any additional taxes on the properties, nor does it have any power of eminent domain to take any properties. The purpose of the authority is basically a redevelopment and development tool that's offered by the state in order to improve the viability of the corridor along 23, in this instance, and F41. The organization of the authority is under the direct appointment of the Board of Trustees. The budget of the authority has to be approved by the Board of Trustees, and the audit of the authority, when and if they have funding, is a component of the township audit. And basically, the authority operates as a redevelopment or a development arm of the board, and they are not an independent authority. They are under the authority of the township board, and they have to meet the financial obligations and the accounting standards of any other authority that's enacted under state statute. The part of the district also includes several of the businesses that were within the traditional Downtown Development Authority that were along some of the side streets in the traditional downtown area, and those would include Pearl Bank, Dwight, for example, Evergreen. The area is pretty much across the street from the current township administrative offices. That's pretty much a summary of what the authority can do. As I had mentioned, it is a redevelopment and a development tool that's available to the township through the state. Communities such as yours, which have a very linear commercial area, definitely benefit from the creation of a CIA, primarily because the composition of the board is made up of business and property owners that are tasked with basically managing and planning for what happens within the corridor area. The township, over the years, has taken the preliminary steps that are required to establish a CIA. Those steps were that they have changed the site plan review procedures to include administrative review, which is an expedited process where if a property owner has a smaller development or redevelopment project within the township, they do not have to go to the planning commission. They go through an administrative review, which is more of an internal process, quicker. The township has also enacted the form-based code for the US 23 corridor in the traditional downtown area, and this does allow for mixed use for residential. And those were a couple of the components that need to be required to establish a CIA. Typically, in other communities, those are done after the fact. However, the township has been fairly diligent in the past and has already enacted those type of provisions in order to accommodate a CIA. So at this point, the township is at the statutory public hearing. You do not take any action this evening. You just accept community and property owner comment. You have to wait 60 days, and after the 60-day period, then the township would be presented with a resolution to actually establish the authority, and at that point in time, the board would make a decision if it's a go or no go. But tonight is strictly the public hearing.
All right. Thank you, John. So at this time, if anyone has a question or something they'd like to ask, yes, sir, right here.
Quick question.
Could you come up to the microphone, please, so we could state your name so we can get it for the record, please? So everyone can hear you here.
Jeff Simotis. The question I have is, the current zoning that's in place right now, if you look at the online ordinance, I don't know if the online ordinance is the actual ordinance that's being followed by as zoning in Oscoda, but for instance, the F41 corridor that used to be zone B2, and then you actually have a classification called F41, business. What zoning is in place right now on the F41 corridor, let's say from Lodge Road to Benetton Creek?
The zoning on F41 is actually, it's under the B2 district, but it's called corridor commercial. F41 has its own sub-area designation.
Okay.
And it's got its own list of uses.
So will you have to still comply with the existing zoning of B2?
No, you would comply, if you're in that area, you would comply with the F41 provisions.
Okay, F41's not in the ordinance. It's labeled as F41, but there's no description of the F41.
Well, if it's not in the current code on the web, you give me your email address, I can certainly provide you a copy.
Okay. In the ordinance right now, this online, once again, not sure if that's proposed or current active, it talks about this commercial corridor improvement authority, or the corridor improvement district, and it has a lot of specific guidelines that are stated in there. For instance, it talks about the types of plants, flowers, and stuff like that.
Correct.
That need to be incorporated. So is that active right now? Is that an active ordinance in place right now?
That is active.
And did all the people, property owners in that district receive notification of that ordinance change?
It was through a public hearing at the Board of Trustees.
No, I'm saying, were they all notified of the hearing?
Because the number of property owners was over 11. The state statute for rezoning says if the rezoning encompasses more than 11 properties, that the township can advertise the rezoning via the newspaper of general circulation.
So so the affected parties were not personally notified. You have to rely on reading the publication, Oscoda Press or whatever.
That's correct. They followed the state statute and that provision.
All right. So, I guess you answered my question. Right now, the existing ordinance says that you could dictate the township board or whoever, the zoning administrator, I guess would be the particular individual, could dictate the type of vegetative stuff we have in there.
Well, the vegetation that's in the F-41 actually comes from the current code. If you look at the current zone.
I mean, it actually names by its scientific name, the flowers and flora.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. And that's, much of that comes from the existing code that's in effect right now.
Okay. Was that a consideration when the Dollar Tree was put in, as far as its setback from the sidewalk?
Yes.
Okay, so that's considered a possible acceptable situation where we can get that close to the actual highway or the bike path or whatever?
That's correct.
Okay. Seems somewhat contrary when you talk about the alignment that you talk about in your notification here, where it has a lot to do with how properties are aligned and more attractive as far as automobile traffic and how it looks to the general public as they travel back and forth. It seems to be somewhat contrary, but that's a different reference. I actually have a property owner here, so I have a particular personal concern as to what I can do, because I have some current activity on the property, and I want to be able to answer what they can or cannot do. So at this point in time, the zoning administrator makes a determination as far as a typical land use permit.
Yes, you would need to see the zoning administrator. He has a current copy of the ordinance.
Okay.
But like I said, it may not be, it may not have been updated yet on Unicode, which the township uses, which is a web-based codification system. But if you
It'd
did
probably be important to probably put that notice on the township board site.
if you provide me your email, I'm happy to send you a copy of the
Okay.
ordinance.
And then, yeah, I will certainly do that. There's one last question. Since B2 was the original zoning for the particular property that I'm involved with, is B2 still a consideration, or is it no longer a consideration?
Well, many of the regulated uses in the F-41 came out of the B2.
Came out of B2?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. All right, that's what I need to know. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you. Please, yes.
David Carmona, resident. Thank you for your explanation, Mr. Icongelli. With the creation of the Corridor Improvement Authority, those contained within it under the statute will be replaced, it will be replacing the EIC for those businesses. So my question is, since a business can't be under two authorities, will the EIC continue to exist because we have businesses which are outside of the CIA? And is a provision being made to provide economic opportunity to those businesses outside the CIA, similar to what is going to exist within the CIA?
That's a policy of the township board, but my recommendation to the board would be not to dissolve the economic commission that you currently have, because that is township-wide. The CIA is an authority specifically for the two corridors. You have other economic opportunities in the township that would need attention by another group.
So would that become part of the future resolution to establish the CIA?
It's a decision that the township board would make when they want to create the CIA. We really I have not had an opportunity to talk to the supervisor or the board relative to how they want to actually organize the CIA, but I appreciate your comment because that's something I was thinking of as well.
Okay. And my last question, Mr. Icongelli, will you be involved in creating the resolution for our township?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Anyone? Yes.
I'll give you a card.
Hey, I'm Tom Maxwell. Mr. Aquangeli, can you just talk briefly about the TIF that will be formed as a result of the Corridor Improvement Authority?
That's another decision that the township board and once the CIA is created, that's a decision that they would make collaboratively. It's one of the tools within the Corridor Improvement Authority that they can do a development plan which has a tax increment component to it. But the tax increment component doesn't require any new levy of taxes. It's just a redistribution of the taxes that are paid to the township and the county.
So basically, as assessments, property values increase over time, that value would stay within our local community, correct?
Yes, I mean, if a TIF was created, let me give you an example. Let's say the assessment on your property today in 2024 was $100,000, your taxable value. And let's say next year it increases by 5% based on inflation, so it goes up to $105,000. The township and the county would receive their millage based on the $100,000. The Corridor Improvement Authority would receive a portion of the $5,000 increase. So the township and the county, their base, they would always receive the base taxable value. Any incremental increase caused by the increase in property values in the corridor under a TIF get reallocated to the Corridor Improvement Authority, just like they did the DDA, so they have funding in order to do their projects and programs.
Great, I appreciate it. I've received a number of questions from the public about that, and so that's why I wanted to bring it up and have him speak on that.
Yeah, not a problem.
Yeah, there was, I'm pretty familiar with it because my dad was the chair of the DDA for a number of years, and these exist in a lot of other communities. There was conversation from the board about the TIF. Are you going to expound on that at this point tonight, or is that going to be for a different conversation? When you initially had the conversation, the TIF was referenced.
I believe that will be for another time. The meeting
Yeah,
tonight
I
is
mean,
simply...
what happens, Mr. Maxwell, is the township board, after they approve the enactment of the CIA, have to appoint a board of directors. It's the board of directors of the CIA that would make a determination if they want to do it. They have to do a development plan. The TIF is optional. And at that point, they would have to come back before the board and ask the board if they could proceed with a TIF. So I'm looking at that as something that would happen probably November, December, January at the earliest.
What are the deadlines for the funding for taxes in terms of looking at it for next year's and the actual revenue? Because that's, most communities, when they look at a Corridor Improvement Authority, the funding mechanism is a key part of that. And so I'm just wondering what those deadlines are.
Well, the deadline would be, let's say the CIA, after they were instituted, worked with the township board, and they wanted to pursue a TIF. The soonest they could adopt one would be by the fourth Monday in May. So they would have to adopt the development plan and tax increment plan by the last Monday in May of 2025 in order to establish the base year that would be established by the assessor on December 31st of 2024. Now, if they miss that target date in 2025, then they would have to wait an additional year. So there are some key dates, and really they're based on when the assessment roll is certified by the assessor, when it's approved by the local board of appeals, tax board of appeals, and then when it's finally approved by the township board. So those are kind of some some milestones that have to be approved later on. And like I said, I would think that based on the schedule, if the CIA wanted to do a TIF, the process probably wouldn't even start until December or January.
Okay. One question I've had is, hypothetically, if we go into a recession and we see a decrease in assessed values,
Yep.
what happens to the TIF? Because, you know, when kind of everybody went through the Great Recession, we saw it around here, it hit really, really hard. Obviously, we're hoping that doesn't repeat itself, but what happens in those times to the funding mechanism with the TIF?
Well, what happens is as the taxable values decrease, okay, if they go below the base year, the CIA doesn't receive any money, all of the money. You know, if it hits the base year or below, all the funds go to the taxing authorities, go to the township and county.
Okay. This is a question either for you or the board. With the new board coming in, is this board intent to seat the Corridor Improvement Authority board before we take place, or to allow the next board?
Bill?
I believe, and John, correct me if I'm wrong here, but given the 60-day time period that we're waiting after this public hearing will put us pretty close to when the new board would be
Yeah,
coming
I
into
think under the
existence,
60-day provision, this board would have the opportunity to create the board, the CIA, at your, I'm trying to think of your calendar. Do you meet on October 28th? Or November, would be whatever your last meeting would be in
It
November?
would be October 28th is the
You
last
could- you
meeting
could-
in
you could do-
October.
you could- When I ran the calendar to set the schedule, this board could create the authority. The next board is going to be the one that should be appointing the authority.
Okay.
yes.
That's one point I think is key. We saw that with the recommendation from the firm for the superintendent that, you know, the turnover we are seeing on the board is pretty significant. And I think, you know, being respectful of that in the community, I think would go a long ways for community support with the Corridor Improvement Authority going forward. So that's all my questions. I appreciate the time.
All right, thank you. Did you have another question?
It basically dealt with what Tom was talking about as far as the
Okay.
60-day period and the current board would be wise to wait till the board is set.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Steve Spenceley, I'm a property owner. I guess one of the questions I have is, do you have examples of other communities that have done this and what they've accomplished? I mean, I understand setting up the board, but I just wonder what, if everybody's doing the same thing, or what kind of things have they done?
Well, there's over 300 of these authorities throughout the state, and they all have a variety of different projects that they've worked on, depending on if they're a downtown development authority, a local development finance authority, a CIA. They're like, for example, Tawas and East Tawas both have downtown development authorities that have worked on their projects. City of Alpena has a downtown development authority. I know that Alpena Township at one point was looking at a CIA. Eau Gray has a downtown development authority that extends basically along their entire 23 corridor. They use the DDA to do theirs. You're using the CIA to do yours. The geography is pretty much the same. A successful one, another one is City of Livonia, which was a township before they became a city. Plymouth Road, which is 6 miles long, is an authority, and they've completely redone that entire area. So there's a number of them around the state that have been in existence probably since the late 70s. And the last time there was a count, there was well over 300 of them within the state of Michigan.
So if you could pick one that I could go look at or study, what one should I go look at?
Well, I would think a great example of a corridor that's long and linear, six miles long. If you're ever down in southeast Michigan, go over to Livonia and take a look at Plymouth Road.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Anyone have anything into the public hearing here? Okay, seeing none, Do I have a motion to come out of public hearing?
Bill, I had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry,
It's
yeah,
no
the
worries.
board.
Thank you,
Okay.
no worries.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, yeah, I had a question, and it had to do with when this was first proposed to the board. Sorry.
Sorry.
When it was first proposed to the board earlier this year, we passed the motion that then led to you putting this together for us and leading us to here tonight. The question that I asked at the time, what had to do with training, and I don't see the underlying governing documents that are putting this into place and what ultimately this thing will be, that we would be ratifying 60 days from now. I wanted to know, in these other communities that have put their CIAs together, what do they do to make sure that the people on their board are trained?
Okay, that's a great question. The way that the state statute is set up, once the board is appointed, the first thing the board has to do is put together and approve a set of bylaws on how they're going to operate. Those bylaws then are transmitted to the board of trustees, and the trustees have to also adopt the bylaws. So that's kind of like the governing document for the CIA.
Yep.
And then some of the authorities go through kind of like an internalized governance training on how to operate as a board. Because the state statute requires that you have a board chair, a vice chair, and a secretary, much like you have up here. And, you know, they all have different responsibilities. And I know that the township over the years, because that's how I first got involved with Oscoda Township many years ago, is they brought me in through the Michigan Association of Planning as an instructor. And I know the township has been really good about requiring their committees and commissions to go through continuing education. And the same thing we would recommend, and I'm sure the township would do it, would be to have the CIA go through at least a couple of hour training on governance, board governance, in terms of how to operate a meeting, how to keep minutes, how to make motions, and all that other good stuff.
Thank you. Actually, believe it or not, we don't get that as board members here. When the election trips over, we can see things online from the MTA, but there isn't necessarily a first primer, a basic set of classes that we can immediately jump into statewide. The first convention or opportunity to get together for any kind of a live training with folks is actually quite a bit down the road. So that's why I ask, what would this be, and is there something specific?
It's a great question, and I don't want to go too far off the reservation based on what's in the public hearing, but since Mr. Maxwell is in the audience,
Yep.
the first thing that's usually recommended for a new board, especially if there's a significant turnover on the board, would be to spend like a good Saturday morning and bring in a person, a professional, that can go through with the board basic governance procedures to get them kind of up and running to understand what the primer on township government is. Because there is a state statute that manages how township boards operate in terms of what their roles and responsibilities are.
Right.
That's at the board level. The CIA level, there's other professionals that come in that can do the board and governance training.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other board members have questions?
I wanted to answer a couple of questions. The Corridor Business District zoning is currently online on the zoning page. If you go to the zoning page on the website, you will find it under the Corridor Business District. It's at the bottom. You just click on that link and it brings up the zoning for that whole area. The difference also that was brought up, the CIA is an authority and the EIC is a committee. So, you know, they're really not the same thing. So the corridor authority would be for a design district, where the economic improvement committee is for the entire township. So it has different things that we discussed. Let me see what else was here. No, that's it.
Okay. Anyone else? Questions? If not, now we'll take a motion to go out of the public hearing.
Bill, there's a question from the audience.
Oh, sorry.
Dave Carmona again. Does the RRDC retention certification reside with the EIC or with Nancy's office?
State that again, the RRC certification?
Yeah. Where does that reside? I
That
know the
resides at the
EIC is
township board.
involved in it. Well, I understand that, but the EIC was tasked at doing that, and now we're gonna create the CIA, an authority. So how is that gonna dovetail together? Is it gonna be through Nancy's office as the focal for this?
I think she will probably work on that, but that'll be a board function that we'll have to create after the 60-day time period.
And I know it's a policy issue that they have to decide on. That's why I'm bringing it up. It's just things to throw in the hopper to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Raymond Catula. So I got a question about this, when this authority is created and if it will impact any plans that are existing, say specifically the special land use approval that was permitted for Party and Food Center, and also any other plans that are along this district that have been approved.
No, Ray.
Okay, so there's no
There-
impact on
it has-
anything existing? Okay.
Correct, nothing, has nothing to do with those.
Okay. And then as far as appointing members to this, how would that work? Is that going to be application or any, I know you mentioned business owners?
Yes, I would assume the board has a application procedure for members. I'll have to, defer to the board on how they,
Okay.
find members.
And would it be anybody that's also on the board, or specifically you said just business owners within that district?
Well, the way the state statute's set up is that you have the chief executive officer, which is usually in a township is the supervisor or their designee. They want to designate somebody else in the administration. And then you have up to 5 to 9. So you're going to have a board of 6 or 10. And they say within that, you need to have one residential property owner. And then the rest, I always recommend be property owners from the district. Because
Okay.
that's the purpose of setting up the CIA, is to improve the corridors. So you want property owners that are in the corridors.
And then would it also be somebody else that's, say, on a different board or a different, commission or things like that? Would they be able to be on both?
No, typically with like a downtown development authority and a CIA, usually it's the board, the members are separate. There's not a lot of mixing.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else? Questions? Board, any other questions?
Brian Haley, Oscoda. Now, you mentioned on the CIA, I haven't studied up on it all. Sounds halfway decent. But you mentioned there's 300 municipalities or examples of this in Michigan?
Last time I checked with the Secretary of State,
Right, okay.
they said 305, but that was a couple of
All
years ago.
right, and how many municipalities in the state?
How many municipalities?
Well, how many government bodies?
Man, I don't know, probably, I would have no idea, 6,000,
About
7,000.
1,700? Sound
Oh,
about right?
it's gotta be.
Okay. All right, now on the form-based code, you mentioned that, the zoning. So my look at form-based code, not against it, I prefer traditional myself, but what percentage in Michigan are using form-based code? Or even in the United States, roughly?
I would really have no idea. I haven't seen any numbers, but it's...
About 2.5% to,
No, I would...
according to the MEDC.
I'm,
Ms. Miller, you know, you're familiar with Ms. Miller, about 2%. So that's just a point. I'm glad Mr. Maxwell's here. Not against what you're trying to talk about, but numbers matter. So I think you'll find that that's true. Right, Bob? Form-based code, about 2%, roughly?
There's more than that.
More? What, 3?
I have no idea where...
Okay, well...
I don't have no
Hey,
idea
I
where
won't delay you
MEDC
any
got
longer.
their
I just wanted to
information.
put that out. Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
Thank you. All right. Anyone else? Last call. Board? All right. Can I get a motion to come out of the closed public hearing?
I move that we come out of public hearing.
Support?
Roll call, please.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Taser?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Ms. McGuire?
Yes?
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, we are now out of the public hearing. Next up is public comment. We ask that you fill out a card for this first public comment. Do we have any cards?
We do not.
Okay, no cards. Moving on is the consent agenda. We have meeting minutes from July 22nd, August 12th, August 19th, July 12th, and the Oscoda Air Force meeting on August 20th, and the payment of bills for August 27th of $39,446.31, the check run for August 20th of $97,762, report on the 2024 DWSRF and the 2024 CWSRF, and the utility billing refunds. Any questions on any of these items in the consent agenda?
I just had one correction for the August 12th meeting minutes. Under the Plant Moran proposal, it was for the clerk and the treasurer, and then the clerk and treasurer would just keep the superintendent in the loop.
That correction?
Yes.
All right. Anything else? Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda with the corrections.
Support, Sutton?
Roll call, please.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes?
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Taser?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. Next up is our subcommittee reports. First is engineering, Mr. Freeman. He was not able to be here this evening with us. Today's his wife's birthday, and he felt more important to be with his wife on her birthday than come to this meeting, so.
Smart man.
Smart man, smart man. Next is the Oscoda Workman, the Airport Authority. They are working, right now, they are working on getting a grant to build a new terminal. There's funding available through the federal government for general aviation airports, of which our Wordsmith Airport is one. And so they are busy working on a grant to do that. They just finished the Northern Strike, which is something they do nearly every year up here for the last few years. You may have noticed some different planes. I was especially taken aback by the F-16s that were flying around here. You couldn't miss those. You might miss seeing them, but you wouldn't miss the sound, I guarantee. It was quite exciting to see those flying around. So they have a lot of things going on at the airport, and they are working hard over there. So next up is the Planning Commission. Mr. Taser.
I wasn't at the last meeting, so I don't have a report.
Okay. ZBA, Mr. Spencer.
Still no meetings for the ZBA.
LDFA, Ms. McGuire.
Just a reminder, the end of the year is coming, so we're going to need to reappoint people to the LDFA. They did lose a couple people from the airport side. Don Nolan had retired, and we'll probably need different appointments come the end of November as well.
Okay. EIC, Mr. Sutton.
In our last meeting on August 8th, we voted to recommend Lake Theater for the facade grant in the amount of $8,100, which was left over from another facade grant that had been completed out, and that will be on the agenda for approval tonight for you guys.
All right. Next is the 911 Committee, Mr. Spencer.
I was unable to attend the last meeting, so I don't have, and our secondary is no longer, we haven't appointed a new one yet, so.
Okay. All right. Next is the HUSRA Committee. I attended that meeting with Ms. Klein. They did their audit presentation at that last meeting, and they are working on a member community operating policy, which they'll be updating. And just for everybody's information, HUSRA, the communities that are involved in HUSRA are Tawas City, East Tawas, Baldwin Township, Oscoda Township, and Oscoda Township. Next up is the RAB report. Mr. Cummings?
Yes, thank you. So this meeting was just last week. A couple of points. It was certainly a lively discussion. First thing is that the Air Force has redefined the boundaries around where they are calling the contamination. It's now outside the, I'm getting feedback, by the way. It's now outside the property lines of the Air Force Base itself. One of the discussion points was that they abutted the boundary up to the shoreline of Van Etten Lake, but they didn't go into Van Etten Lake, and they didn't go beyond to the east side of Van Etten Lake. And this caused a whole lot of discussion that I think is really important for those of us in this community. There was also a timeline presented by the Air Force that again led to some lively discussion, where they were basically putting a calendar out there for the 5-year forecast, and it was becoming apparent. They were presenting that their data gap and feasibility studies, followed by a series of other actions, and that the PFAS remediation would be going from 2028 and forward. So this is a much protracted picture than I think everybody on the RAB was expecting, and like I said, lively discussion for sure. So essentially, between now and the township, we try to figure out how we're going to get this to move a little faster. And that's my update.
All right, thank you. Next, the Cedar Lake Improvement Board. Mr. Wisbarth is not here. Utility Subcommittee, and the Community Development Director, Ms. House.
I don't want to scare anybody. I'm not going to go through all these papers. It's my security blanket is to have my paper with me. So, good evening. I've been very busy, as you can tell by my update that I provided to the board. At our last EIC meeting, we welcomed Mr. Carmona to the EIC committee. And, pardon? Yes, and then we ambushed him and elected him as the vice chair of the committee. So just a reminder, we still have a vacancy on the committee for an alternate, and we're looking to get that filled. As Mr. Sutton mentioned, we do have a facade grant coming to the board this evening for our recommendation to the board for approval for the Lake Theater, and I would recommend that the board, if they so choose, would approve that. Mr. Palmer mentioned the terminal being built or proposed to be built out at the airport, and I was contacted by Jack Barnes and Brenda McNeil to do a letter of support for that project, which I did. And the EIC approved it at our August meeting, and the board does have a copy of that letter that I did and sent that off. Excuse me. One of the things that you'll see on the agenda for later this evening is a recommendation for a date for the annual meeting of the boards. And at our EIC meeting, we looked at the date, 2 dates, either Monday the 16th of September or Monday, September 30th. We tried to do it in between your meeting, your regular meetings, so we weren't bombarding you guys with more meetings in one particular week. So, and if you find that those 2 dates do not work, please let me know and I can take something back to our September meeting for a recommendation. We're getting closer on the EIC website. I've been contacted by the company Revise, and they have provided me with an opportunity, and Tara also, to get in and look at the site map. So it is that far along in the process, and hopefully we'll move further on from there. So I'm looking forward to that. It came up about training opportunities, and just a reminder, if you look at my reports from that went to the EIC committee and that I provided to the board, there are some opportunities out there. Tomorrow there is a developers roadshow is what it's called, up in Alpena, so I will be attending that. I did meet with 2 developers this past Friday, one from the Ann Arbor area and one from Gaylord. And the gentleman from Ann Arbor is familiar with the Oscoda area because his grandmother taught in the Oscoda School District for over 30 years, and his mom taught in Tawas. So that was a good meeting that I had. I had an opportunity to sit down with Mary Ed Tootin earlier this month, and we sat down and we spent considerable amount of time going through the terms of office for the EIC members, and I think we have that worked out. And I think that topic now we can put to rest for right now. So that is done, and I appreciate Ms. Tootin taking the time to come in and work with me on that project. The RRC survey. I proposed to the EIC earlier this month that we plan a special work session of the EIC committee to start laying the foundation for that survey that needs to be done yet this year. At least get it started so that and the OTB will be provided with the date once we get that set up. And last but not least, on your agenda for later tonight, I have been appointed to the Board of Directors for Develop IOSCO. And I would respectfully ask the board for them to reconsider joining Develop IOSCO if they so choose, if that's something you want to do. Taking off one hat and putting on another, the Wordsmith Air Museum celebrated its 2,000th visitor this past weekend for the 2004 season. So we've been really busy out there. So if anybody gets a chance and wants to come out, please do. We're open Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, 11 to 3. And just a final note to thank the Oscoda Township Board for a great opportunity. I'm very busy, I'm learning a lot, and have a whole lot more to learn. So any questions for me from the board?
I do. Okay. I wanted to ask, first of all, what were the outcomes of the discussion regarding term dates that you had?
Going back, we went right back to 2019 when the EIC was established by the board. And we went as far back as when Mark Wygant was appointed, Dave Eiler, Rhonda Cope, and I believe she was on the Planning Commission at the time. So we went back through every set of minutes that was on the township documents on demand, and we did a timeline for everybody. As it stands right now, you do have 3 EIC members whose terms will expire in 2026. And somewhere along the line, the township board will need to look at that and readjust that, because they're supposed to be staggered. And whether you do it by position, whether you do it by years of calendar years, however the board will want to do it at that time, that will need to be done. Mr. Eiler, Mr. Carmona, Mr. Osborne are all listed as their terms December 31st of 2026. And that is by board approval. Mr. Sutton, obviously, he is the representative from OTB, and Mr. O'Connor is the representative from the Planning Commission. Planning Commission establishes committee members and board officers in July, and the OTB will change in November when the new board comes on board. But I appreciated her coming in, and we took a lot of time to do that, so.
Yeah, and I'll save my other questions for the later topics. Thank you.
Anything else? All right, thank you, Nancy. Thank you. That's the end of our subcommittee reports. Next is the resolution 2024-25. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve Resolution 2024-25 regarding the millage rate.
Support Cummings.
Any discussion, questions? I think our assessor summed that up quite well. Roll call, please.
Mr. Taser?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes?
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. Give me just a second to get caught up here. All right, next up is the agreement for sexton services. I would like to suggest to the board that we postpone this action. I talked to our township attorney late this afternoon. I had some questions, and I think there are some corrections that need to be made in the document that's here. Our current township attorney did not draft this document. She has a few changes she would like to make to it, so I would suggest we postpone this until we can get review from the attorney and get some clarification on some questions that I have on this. So I would make a motion to postpone the sexton services agreement until the next meeting.
Support.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Taser?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes?
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. I will get some clarification on this, and we will have it on our next agenda. Next up is the 2025 Chamber Guide ad that we do every year. This is for the Oscoda Chamber of Commerce. We've had the same location on the back cover of that magazine for a number of years. Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the expenditure for $2,100 for the back cover for the Chamber Guide for 2025.
Support Sutton?
Questions, comments? Anyone have any thoughts on this?
Yep.
Something we do every year, have the same ad. I think they're going to update our ad a little bit, but anyway. Roll call, please.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes?
Mr. Taser?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. Next is, unfortunately, a resignation from the Planning Commission. Ms. Christine Beckner sent me an email. You have that in our packet. She wishes to resign from the Planning Commission. Can I get a motion to accept her resignation?
I'll accept it with regrets,
Support Cummings.
or I'll make the motion too. How about that? Yes.
Yeah. Supported by Mr. Cummings? Any discussion?
Yeah, I would, of course. Are you aware of what's highlighted here in yellow? Do you have the backstory on this? Have you looked into it or know what's going on with that?
From what I understand, it's from social media. And I don't participate much in social
No,
media.
I
so
just wonder if you may have disclosed more than
it's,
that.
I think it's unfortunate
Of course.
that people volunteer for these are basically volunteer positions for the most part. And to be ridiculed, and Ms. Beckner at one point had, she's been on the Planning Commission a while, and she's done a lot of training, gone to a lot of classes. And at one point, when we were looking for a zoning director, she was considering applying for that job. And unfortunately, some people from social media contacted her employer, raised all kinds of problems for her, and she rescinded her offer to take that position. So it's unfortunate when, you know, we look for people to volunteer to be on these boards, and it's a shame, I think, that anyone would be subjected to this kind of behavior when they're trying to do a public service and trying to help out the community. So Ms. McGuire said with regrets, I would echo that with deep regrets that she's forced to resign. So we have a motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call, please.
Mr. Taser?
Before I vote, I have something to say also. Reading this letter is extremely disturbing to me. This person has dedicated time to our community, and for her daughter to be subjected to this tells you to the extent that some people will go. It's shameful. Extremely shameful. How do you expect our township to move forward with any type of committee when this is the type of thing that comes out? Even after this was published into the board packet, I had received comments. Oh, she signed up for that. What kind of comment is that? It's horrible. That's my opinion on this. Bash me if you want. Have at it. Doesn't matter anymore. But just remember, you get what you pay for. When you start getting people that are dedicating their time away from their families. This is a single mom. Horrible. So I vote no for principle.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, sadly. Next up is, good news, I guess, is Planning Commission appointment.
The new glutton for punishment. I'd make a motion that Eric Kahn be appointed to the Township Planning Commission. I'll support that.
Discussion, questions?
Is the term just for the remainder until the end of this year?
His term would end 12/31/24.
Got it, okay.
Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, I guess my only question here is, so is he going to be able to get some kind of training in just the 4 months? I just look at the Planning Commission as being one of our second most important boards committees, if you will.
I had the opportunity to speak with Mr. Khan,
Yeah.
and he has taken it upon himself to get the different publications that we have available in the zoning office, and has been reading up on Planning Commission, the Enabling Act, those kinds of things on his own. So I think...
That's a good initiative, thank you.
And I would hope that the new board, when they come in, will reappoint him if he's interested in taking on another term. I believe he will be. So I would hope the new board would approve that to give him another 3 years on that board. Any other questions, comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Taser?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Ms. McGuire?
Yes?
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. The next topic is the MERS retirement plan. In our finance meeting this morning, it was discussed that we possibly need to look into this a little further. And if we're fortunate enough to get a new interim superintendent, I believe he has a good deal of knowledge and information and background in investments and finances, and may be able to help guide the board in this decision. I think the basic decision here, what we're talking about, is changing the retirement plan for township employees to a similar plan that the police department has. But it's slightly different. Mr. Sutton, you have information on that?
Yeah, it's basically, we're looking at having MERS take on the 401Ks for the township, and through reviewing the original documents we had when we left, that looked to be the intention of the board at that time. And so they had bid that out. That also offers plans for any of our part-time employees, which was something we've been asked about because we have a lot of seasonal and part-time that come back every year and are interested in putting money into retirement or different options. So there's all of those different plans presented in there. But I know we're going to review that and hopefully have the interim superintendent there to help review, and then we'll bring that back.
Right, just so everybody's aware, at the finance meeting this morning, I brought this up because there is a plan trustees committee, and that should be the superintendent, the clerk, and the treasurer. I was not aware this stuff was going to be on the agenda, and to be honest, I didn't even look at it. I had no idea about it. So, and usually with that committee, we have an investment service manager who's a professional that deals with the pension plans and stuff like that help us guide and put something together to propose for the township employees. So, and that hasn't happened either, so we're going to take a look at that.
Yeah, I'd like to also state that from the 8.5 years on this board, it was my understanding that we were trying to lessen our dependence on MERS because we were running into a loss of equity, which is what you need to have for supporting of these retirement plans, and to add more people and to then I just blanked on the word. When you mature, I can't think of the right word for it. What's the word for that? Vest. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
If you vest so quickly, then the opportunity to make contributions is lost. So just a concern. I thought we were trying to lessen our footprint on this, and it seems like we're trying to double down on it. So I look forward to the conversation in the future.
So I would like to make a motion to postpone this item to a future meeting.
Support?
Any discussion on that? Roll call, please.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Taser?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Ms. McGuire?
Yes?
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. We will, Finance Committee meeting can meet on this, or the
Plan trustees.
plan trustees, there you go. Next is the request from Rowe Engineering for Phase 3 water main additional services. I would make a motion to move to approve the payment of $38,257 for additional services on the Phase 3 water main project to be paid from C2R2 to Rowe Engineering.
Support.
What was your amount?
Discussion.
What was your amount on your motion?
$38,257. Questions, comments? This was additional work that was done on the Phase 3 water main. This was some of the first that we did under the C2R2 grant, and I don't believe it was proposed that the wells would need to be capped, which it turns out was a requirement of the C2R2 funding. In our previous grants, that was not a requirement. The homeowners were not required to cap their wells. Under the C2R2, they were. So that was additional work that Rowe had to do to make sure that those were done to comply with the grant. So, any other questions, comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes?
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Taser?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. Next is, as Ms. House mentioned, is a date for the annual meeting of the boards. I would move to approve September 30th, 2024 for the annual meeting of the boards. Hopefully that'll give us some time to get our interim superintendent involved in the township, and hopefully everyone will have time to set aside an hour or so on the 30th.
I'll support that.
Discussion, questions, comments? I believe that's scheduled to be here right here in the theater. You have that confirmed, right? Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Taser?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. Next is the facade grant recommendation from the EIC. Do I have a motion?
I would move that the facade grant for the Lake Theater at 117 East Dwight Street, Oscoda, Michigan 48750 in the amount of $8,100 be approved.
Support, Sutton.
Questions, discussion?
Just for clarity, Nancy, I'm sure you know the answer to this. I know that we've given some of the grants to the theater already. Was there like a line or a, like, first come, first serve kind of thing, or how did that work?
We had originally 5 applications for this round of facade grants. The first one was for Tim Galton for the old bus garage, PKL for the old IGA building, Truly Yours, Sharon Ostrander, Scott Miles for Miles Insurance, and that project has been completed. And then we also had the one for Landmark Title. So we had those 5. Then we had the Lake Theater come in afterwards, and they were like on standby. Then we still have 2 more out there waiting. One for Jack Zubek from Zubek Motors, and then the others from here on out. So when the money became available from PKL, when they finished out at $1,900, we had that $8,100 left, so that's why I contacted Teresa and Jim to see if they still wanted to move forward with the signage project, and they did.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions, comments from the board? I believe when this facade grant was originated, that was the idea. The township sets aside $50,000 a year to provide facade grants for businesses. And the idea was we would take the first applicants until we got to the 50,000, and then we would stop. And then if all the money wasn't used during the time period, we would go to the next applicant in line, which is what we're doing in this case, so. Roll call, please.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes?
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Taser?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. Next on the agenda is the recommendation or a comment on Develop IOSCO, which was presented by Ms. House again as well.
So I have questions on this. I guess back to the, yeah, we're just giving you exercise. No.
Yes, sir.
Well, so I guess the first thing I wanted to ask is that, you see, when you said you were appointed to the board of directors,
Yeah.
and was it as a representative of Oscoda Township?
Correct.
So, well, this board didn't appoint that.
No. I basically was asked to apply for that open seat to represent the township, which I did, not really knowing whether I'd get appointed or, approved by their board or not. And I was.
Right, well, very good, and congratulations. I think sequentially, though, it's supposed to come from Mr. Palmer, and then we approve the appointment,
okay.
because you technically have no authority to represent us without that agreement.
I'm just there.
But here, listen to me out, because that's not on the agenda. And since it's overlooked, it looks like we don't understand the sequence of horse and cart here. So I think that needs to be put on an agenda here, or we deal with it tonight. But that's the first question I had. And the second was, when you say, and I'm reading this, I would respectfully ask the Township Board of Trustees to reconsider its position. We never had a position. It's never come to this board that I know of. So what is the reconsideration that you think we're supposed to be doing?
My understanding was that Chris Martin, who is the executive director of Develop IOSCO, did come to the Township Board and make a presentation.
He did.
He also came to the EIC
Yeah.
and made a presentation to us too. My understanding was that he did that presentation in hopes of the board approving their membership with DI. That was my understanding, sir.
Totally fine. But was there some other discussion? Because it didn't come to the board for an action.
That I do not know. I would have to go back and look at, or talk to Mr. Martin.
Okay.
But I did know that he came to the board, like he did to the EIC.
Yeah.
Well, this was an appointment by Develop IOSCO, not by the township. So they are the ones that appointed her to their board.
Yeah.
So that is not under our purview to regulate
Yeah.
that. And I believe that the problem we had in the past was that they wanted us to pay dues, and we are the largest group in the county, and our dues were like $7,500.
Yeah. 7,200 was what I remember.
But we had no representation on their board.
Correct.
Now we have that representation.
You're stuck with me.
So having that representation for Oscoda Township on the Develop IOSCO board, I think that now we can reconsider whether or not we want to spend money for dues to belong to that. I think it's a worthwhile endeavor to have that relationship. But my problem before was that it's sort of like taxation without representation. You spend a bunch of money, but you have no say in what they do or how they operate. So now that we have that, with Ms. House being on that board, I believe we should reconsider our joining Develop IOSCO. So, is there a motion?
What happens if Ms. House quits? And does this board have the opportunity to appoint a new person to it?
No.
Then,
No.
so we could be right back in the same boat in 30 days, where only now we've already paid the money and we still don't have representation.
Well, I don't
No
think.
offense, Ms. House.
Yeah, none taken.
No, I don't think you're going anywhere. Don't get me wrong. I'm pointing out that the reason that we were looking at, or the reason that we didn't really, is because we weren't going to have representation. And if we don't get to pick that we're going to put somebody back in that chair, then we're still in the same boat. We just happen to have somebody now that can take that spot until they decide not to.
Well, the dues are only for a year. So if during the next year, for some reason Ms. House was not a member of that board, or we didn't have representation, we could choose not to renew our membership.
Can't we just tell them that it is contingent upon our ability as our board to designate an individual that sits, or we're not paying? I mean, either if they want the money, then they'll give us the opportunity to designate the person that our board chooses. If they don't want the money, then
It's our option every year whether we not want to renew our membership. And
Right.
if we don't have the representation, then I would advise we don't renew the membership.
I agree, but I'm saying, isn't there a way that we can force that to say, if we're gonna do it, we're gonna have a say, and if you're not gonna give us a say, then we're not gonna do it ever.
No, because they changed it.
No.
Terry Dutcher was on there, and anybody who's on a board cannot be on it. So you have to get.
No, I'm
like,
saying,
a
I don't
citizen
think,
member.
I don't think that
Doesn't
it should
have
be
any
each one
ties
of
to
us. I'm saying that the Oscoda Township Board should have the authority to say who gets that chair at that
No.
that represents that.
No. we
Or,
don't have-
I don't, or I'm not, I can't
We don't
support
have
paying
that
that.
option.
Okay.
So then let me ask this, though, a slightly more compromised viewpoint. So what is it that everyone who's paying these dues in Oscoda County is not a member on the board? Sorry.
There you go.
Everyone who's paying dues is not a member on the board there. So what, I mean, like, I guess they still have representation. There's still people sitting in the audience during these board meetings with developed by OSCO, right? I mean,
I would assume
we would
so.
assume, right? Ms. House, is that correct?
I couldn't hear,
Oh, sorry, okay.
I couldn't hear
Well,
everything you
this
said, sir,
microphone
I'm
battery
sorry.
is dying, so I don't know how to help anybody right now. Between that and the feedback, this is a pretty awful audio night here. So what I'm saying is that the other municipalities in Iosco County, there are others that are part of Develop Iosco,
Right,
not just Oscoda,
right.
that we're
And my
looking for.
understanding is they are part of Develop Iosco.
Yeah, their membership.
Not necessarily sitting on the board.
Correct, and that's my point, is everybody else isn't either. So, yeah, I mean, and to Mr. Spencer's point, I don't think we have to have the position on the board in order to pay the dues, because they're paying dues too. So just to kind of put that out there, just saying it. And they're paying the same dues that we would be paying. Okay, just to be clear.
It's based on population
Okay, fair enough.
of the township.
The formula,
correct.
that makes sense, that's good. So, okay, so then I guess that handled that in my head there, just right then. So then I guess, you said it changed, Josh, so it was not this way a year or so ago? Because we
Yeah.
appointed you to the Develop ASCO.
Right. And they basically changed out their organization.
Right.
I believe, what is it now? It's
My
like a
understanding
nonprofit
is
status that separated it from.
Right, and anyone who is elected cannot serve on the board of directors. That's my understanding.
Got it.
Because I believe that's why Mr. Dutcher had to come off.
Yeah.
Got it. Probably not a bad idea, frankly, but, okay. So I mean, I guess I guess let me go back to what we get for our 7,200, I guess is the number, is what we remember from the presentation that Mr. Martin provided to us, which was fine. I was in favor of it, frankly. Okay, thank you. Well, that helped me clarify all that. Thank you for that.
Is there a motion?
Well, I have comments.
Well, let's have a motion, then we can comment on the motion.
Okay, so then I move that Oscoda Township pay the $7,200 membership fee to Develop Iosco for, I guess it's an annual membership.
Is there support?
I'll support that. Is it prorated because it's August?
I
Just
don't know,
kidding.
is it a calendar year? Is it
Just trying to save money.
I would find that out if the board's motion is successful.
Fine enough, okay, good.
And let's, should we not specify the 72, because I'm not sure that's the amount.
Yeah, let me amend my motion from at most 7,200 and that could be prorated based on it being mid-year. So,
All right.
I'll still
All right.
support that.
Okay.
thank you.
So now, discussion. You had a question, Mr. Taser?
Yes. Even though the Oscoda Township wouldn't have a mandate that we have a member on their board of Develop by Osco, we are the largest municipality that would be paying the most amount of money. And my question is that I'm not sure what the benefits for $7,200 we would get out of Develop by Osco, because it hasn't been specified what we would get out of that. So far, I am not seeing $7,200 worth of monies coming our way. Even though we're not members, we are still part of Iosco County, and the largest municipality with the largest industrial base and the largest population. And I don't know. I would like to see more. I'd like to know more what Develop by Osco's, what their priority list is, what they're looking at moving forward for our community before we spend that kind of money on it, because I don't know.
Mr. Tajer, were you on the board when Mr. Martin did the presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, because
And he didn't really give us
Yeah.
a detail of what the township would gain from membership. Economic development, well, we have an economic development committee our own. There's a lot of regional economic development that's coming out of funding through the state of Michigan.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of talk there, and we all want economic development, and Iosco County has around 25,000 population in it with, 11 municipalities, and we are the largest, and we have the largest population, and I'm seeing Develop Iosco working mostly in the Tawas area. That's what my eyes are seeing. If I'm wrong in that, then show it to me. And so far, it hasn't been shown to me, so that's my point.
Okay. Well, we're not a member yet, so.
But you don't have to be a member to gain the benefits if you're supposed to be a regional, committee.
But I think that's, I guess that's kind of the question then, to go back to Ms. House. So do you have a sound bite here regarding the value of being a member, or?
My own opinion.
Yes.
I guess I look at anything good that happens in any part of Iosco County benefits all of Iosco County,
Sure.
benefits all of Oscoda, Asable, any of the surrounding areas. Any development that we as a township could take advantage of that they provide, and they do a lot of work in their childcare, broadband, housing, anything like that, that we as a township can take advantage of. I know $7,200 is a lot of money, but I think it would be worth it. And like I say, when something good happens in one part of the county, the entire county benefits. That's just my opinion.
Well, like I said earlier, my concern was that we had no representation on that board and we were spending a lot of money. I think now that we have someone that can represent Oscoda Township, and I'm personally, my personal opinion, I'm willing to spend the money to join for this year to see what comes out of it during the course of the next year. If we don't see any benefits from this, then honestly I don't see the point of continuing the membership.
And I would certainly keep the township board and the EIC totally appraised of what's going on.
Okay. So, we have a motion by Mr. Cummings, support by Ms. McGuire. You made the motion to approve joining, correct?
Yeah.
Roll call, please.
Yes.
Mr. Teaser?
No.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, no. Mr. Spencer?
No.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes,
3-3.
motion fails.
Okay. Ms. House, good luck.
I'll still keep you guys in praise as to what I'm doing.
Of course, thank
It's
you.
like I say, I pick up a piece of paper, I get 10 more jobs.
Well, it was a good discussion, and
Yeah.
I wish we had a full board that could break a tie, but unfortunately we don't, so that's where we are. Next up is the recommendation of officer status change. Go ahead.
I would make a motion to approve Officer Dwayne Meyer be transferred to seniority status effective as of August 15th, 2024.
Support, Sutton.
Any questions, comments on this? This is his one-year anniversary date. You want to make that effective on August 15th?
That's,
Yes.
Part of your motion?
Yeah, 'cause it's right in the letter.
yes, yeah, it's effective as of August 15th, 2024.
All right. Any questions, comments on this? Roll call, please.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Teaser?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. Next, we have some row invoices. Let's see.
Glad you're here.
We don't have the list this time, so I can't turn and burn. And the way it was explained to me is that we're not
We only have one
even looking at
invoice.
those tonight.
Yeah, it's not.
Those are not ready.
This was the Ferguson for the meters,
This is
right?
where the only thing we're looking at is the meters for, from Ferguson invoice. I could be wrong. I defer to you.
No, we have row invoices in your packet that we have.
I
to-
saw them all, yeah.
But those don't,
Tara said we don't have to approve those.
yeah, those weren't supposed to be in there. It
Oh.
was just this one at
That's,
the bottom.
yeah, I don't,
that we have.
Okay, so we'll postpone the row invoices,
I don't,
or we'll just remove that from the agenda?
they from the last meeting, or what's, do you know what the deal, why are they in there?
It was a mistake on my part, I apologize.
Are these invoices already paid, or?
One of them, I think, needs to be paid for 19, there's one in there for 19,000 or 12,000.
Normally, the row invoices come in the first meeting of the month, I believe.
Okay, we can postpone them until the next meeting.
So,
Yep. Are any of these coming up due? Are we going to be in trouble if we don't get these paid?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think so.
September
They
9th.
should be good.
On that one.
Yeah.
I think that we
Just
are.
looking
Yeah,
through.
those should all be cut out.
So we will postpone those row invoices and have those in the next meeting packet.
So
make
I make a motion to postpone all of the row invoices until the next regular communication.
Support.
Yeah, these other row invoices don't have due dates.
Okay, roll call, please.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes?
Mr. Teaser?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. We will postpone and have these on our next agenda.
Now, are we looking at the FDI?
Next up is the 1-inch meter pits and meters that have been requested. I would make a motion to approve F&V request to order 8 1-inch meter pits and meters in the amount of $14,008.64 to be paid from C2R2.
Support.
Is that when money is available?
Yes, when money is available in our account.
Thank you.
Still support.
The reason for that is that Ms. Wynn's request was for 6, but in talking to Mr. Freeman, with all the projects that we have going, houses that are a distance away from the road and need a longer line to get from the meter to the house require a 1-inch instead of the standard 3/4. And when I discussed it with Rick Freeman, our engineer, he said there's quite a few that are coming up that will need the 1-inch meters. And there's about a 5-month lead time on getting these meters into our hands. So they wanted to get these right away. The reason I suggest 8 instead of 6 is that they'd like to keep at least a couple of those meters on the shelf for replacements because we are out now. So that's why, and we can divide the invoices for the 6 to be paid from C2R2, and then the others can be paid from the 591 account. Unless we need all 8 for the projects that are ongoing, so.
So then you
That's-
only want 6 to go to C2R2 and 2 to go to the regular town?
No, we'll put all 8 for C2R2 right now. And by the time we get them, we will have a better idea of how many we were going to actually need for. We may need all 8 for C2R2, because especially with the new Phase 7 going in, where that phase is simply hooking up homes in different areas of the township. So if we don't use those, we can separate that invoice and then charge it to 591 instead of the C2R2.
But how are we going to know that? What's the trigger to pay it? Because once it's paid, we don't think about where it was paid from down the road when we take it out of inventory.
Well, we don't pay for them until we get them. So that'll be 5 months from now. And,
Okay.
and by then, we will have a better idea of
Oh,
how
I
many
see.
we're actually going to need.
I see, I see,
Because Phase 7 is just getting started.
I see.
So, had a motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Spencer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Taser?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes,
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. Next is the interim superintendent contract. I sent that out to everybody. I also sent it to Mr. Horning. He had some comments. I gave everybody his comments. I think all those are pretty reasonable, and I see Mr. Horning is in the audience with us. If you'd like to come up and you can have a seat at the table here.
yeah.
If
And Mr. Horning, over here at the table.
if you want to sit at the
Yeah,
table,
sure,
you
why
can.
not? Get used to it. That's right, that's right.
Good evening, everyone. So would you like me to address the issues that I had with the contract?
I was kind of hoping you could just, people could see your face and, you know,
Yeah.
introduce yourself.
Well, my name's Matthew Horning. I'm originally from Ann Arbor. I moved up here to Tawas City, actually Whitney Township, about 5 years ago. I spent my entire career in, basically my entire career in municipal management. Started in city parks, managing golf courses.
Matt, if you could tuck into the microphone a little closer there. So
Sorry
everyone
about
can
that.
hear you. Thank you.
I managed the city golf courses for quite a while. I was interim manager of Parks and Recreation. I got an MBA from the University of Michigan and went into finance with the city of Ann Arbor, eventually becoming the city treasurer, which I did for about 13 or 14 years. Took an early retirement at 50, and they brought me back as interim CFO for about 14 months, I believe. And since that time, I've been doing municipal finance consulting out of my house.
So, any board members have questions for Mr. Horning? Things you'd like to ask?
Are you ready?
I am, yes, I am. I haven't had a full-time job in a couple of years, but I am really looking forward to it. And, you know, I was up here last week. I came about an hour or so early before my meeting with Mr. Palmer and had an opportunity to drive around the city, not just the downtown area, but the lakefront area, almost all of your parks, the Wirt Smith district. And it's a beautiful community, and I look forward to being able to assist the township through the board transition until you can find a permanent superintendent.
So, Bill, so we had a supervisor's contract, superintendent's contract subcommittee meeting last week. That's when I had my first opportunity to meet Mr. Horning. After that meeting, you sent out the contract, like you said, and I replied back with a few things because I was part of the subcommittee dialogue. Did you then have a discussion with the attorney or in some way regarding the sick leave and vacation time?
No. The contract that I sent out is what the attorney came up with.
Yep.
And at the time when I asked him if he could get that contract by Friday so we could get it in the packet for tonight, for this evening. What he had to work with, the attorney had to work with, was old superintendent contracts. And of course, some of the things in there, like the 60-day notification for termination, were standard in our superintendent contracts in the past. As Mr. Hornings pointed out, one of his 3 comments in here was that he would be happy with a 2 or 3 week. He had mentioned 2 weeks. I had thought maybe a 3-week termination notice would be best because of our 2-week time period between board meetings.
Yep.
3 weeks might handle that term better. So what I wanted to do tonight, I haven't sent these recommendations to the attorney to be put into the contract. I was going to wait until I got input from the board. If there were other things that you wanted to perhaps have in there or take out or whatever. But if not, I will send these over to the attorney.
Sure.
And so they can incorporate these into the contract, and hopefully we can get a contract. What I would like to have the board do is approve the contract with the stipulation that these adjustments be made by the attorney. And I was hoping to have this contract start on September 3rd. Was my hope.
So you don't want to take any action on the paid sick leave vacation time that the attorney made comments on in the draft contract that I saw Saturday morning. Is that right?
Well, Mr. Horning has pointed out that he's not interested in any post-employment remuneration. Right, that's
correct.
In terms of
meaning pension,
pension,
401k,
or those kinds of things.
health insurance, that sort of thing.
Health insurance.
Right.
Could we include sick leave that's not used at the end of the term? That would be part of it?
Are you asking to strike that from the contract?
Oh, yeah, it looks like you got the contract at not so long difference time than we were given the contract, and I'd already given feedback to Bill Saturday morning at 10:15 a.m. So the attorney had stated in the contract, just now I guess it's all out in the open, to consider what our position would be for this, because it essentially, we're going to be paying sick leave and vacation time at an hourly rate, and it would be accumulating for the duration of the contract with a payout at the end for both. And with all due respect, we're paying you a very good rate. So my question is, are we doing a bonus at the very end of this? It seemed like a little bit too much to me. So
Understood.
with all due respect, that was the question to Bill, and I'm sorry that this has to take place here in this venue.
That's quite all right.
But that was
It's
the
not
question.
something that I expected to see, and I would be happy to move forward if you wanted to strike those 2 clauses.
Okay, then thank you very much.
I think with the new law that's been passed here in Michigan, employers are required to provide sick leave. Now, which means that during the term of the contract, if Mr. Horning was to be sick, then he would be able to collect that sick leave. What we're talking about is post-employment, that he would not collect any unused sick leave that may have been built up. But we are required by law now to provide sick leave for all employees. Every employer in the state of Michigan now is required to do that, so.
Yeah, the accrual part is not the question, it was the accumulation and payout at the end.
And if we can include, and I will discuss this with the attorney.
And he said he would be fine to give it up.
If the attorney says that we can do that to where post-employment, we wouldn't have to pay any additional monies.
Yeah.
If that's agreeable, and if it's lawful, according to the attorney, then we can draft a contract in that way.
Okay, thank you.
Does that make sense?
That makes
everybody?
sense. Yep. Is that a motion, Bill?
So I would make a motion to approve the interim superintendent contract pending revisions by the attorney related to Mr. Horning's 3 requests with a starting date of September 3rd, 2024.
Support.
So I didn't know, was the sick leave vacation time in that? I didn't get that. I didn't hear that in the motion.
It sounds to me like they're going to let it accrue, but he's not going to get paid at the end because it's a post-employment benefit.
If it's not used.
Yes, if it's not
Anything
used.
that's
So
not
if he
used.
uses it during the time.
As
then
long as
he
that's part of the
gets-
motion, I didn't get it all. Thank you.
I could be, is that?
Is it part of the
Yeah,
motion?
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good, thank you.
And I will work that out with the attorney. We'll see what we can do. Any other questions, comments?
All right.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Taser?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Ms. McGuire?
Yes?
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes. Welcome, Mr. Horning. Happy, no one, I can tell you, no one is happier than I am. Next is addition, Ms. McGuire suggested about the BSNA administrative change.
So we had, Ms. Klein left, and in the off-boarding process, I was speaking to, in our finance meeting, to the supervisor and to the clerk, that Ms. Klein needs to be removed from our BSNA programs, along with Mr. Hamlin, because he's now retired as well. So by BSNA's directive, Ms. Klein was the only enterprise administrator on the programs, and so the board needs to establish a new administrative person, enterprise person, because technically right now we're waiting to on board with Plant Moran, and they need to have read access to that program, and there's nobody here that can give it to them. So I contacted BSNA, and the only way to do that was to have our attorney sign or to have the board appoint somebody and have all the board members sign. So that's why I brought this to the board tonight, so that we can get this moving forward and get some things taken care of.
We're just assigning Mike, or our new superintendent, as the.
We sure can.
Yeah, that would be my motion, to approve making administrative changes from previous superintendent to new interim superintendent, so we can do it all
As
at
of
one
September
time.
3rd.
Okay.
Bill, as of September 3rd.
As of
Can't do
September.
it before the contract's up.
As of September
That's
3rd,
acceptable.
yes.
Oh, sorry.
Is that what the motion does?
Yeah.
No offense, Matt.
Tim. Any other questions, comments from the board? Roll call, please.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Taser?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Ms. McGuire?
Yes?
Mr. Palmer?
Yes. So I guess if you can get the board members that are here to sign tonight.
Absolutely.
we'll
Yeah,
have
do that right now.
We'll have that part done.
Yep.
Next on the agenda is the public comment. Anybody has any public comment, you can come up. Please state your name for the record.
David Carmona, resident in Chatterbox apparently tonight. Just something to consider, you made a resolution at the last meeting to take back all the supervisory powers from the superintendent. Are you going to have to reverse that again?
Yes.
Yes.
On a happier note, this Wednesday is the last White Street Live here in town. It was a project I started to introduce the community to local musicians. I want to thank the people of Oscoda for all their support. It's been great to see between 20 to 50 people out there every Wednesday night when it's not raining. Sold a lot of social district cups down there. The experiment has worked out. The musicians have already asked if we're doing this next year, so we're in the planning stages for it. And since music is one of the arts, we're going to be approaching the board for a vibrancy grant, similar to what's done for the art displays downtown, since that is, music is the arts, and the musicians did everything gratis this year, and I can't thank them enough. I would also like to thank Jim and Teresa, the Lake Theater, for allowing us to use that location. And hopefully next year we can apply to have Dwight Street shut down, because there is quite a bit of traffic on Wednesday night going back and forth. And also maybe get Dwight Street cleaned up and repaired a little bit, because there's some nasty potholes in the crosswalk. So I thank you very much, and I want to thank the community once again for their support all year. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Kerry Osborne, business owner, resident here in Oscoda. Just to kind of clarify, I'm a business owner. I have not been a member of the Chamber of Commerce since I've opened my business. There are benefits to that. You know, you become a chamber member, you get promoted. The same thing with Develop by Osco. If you've done your due diligence and made some phone calls, you might know what Develop by Osco is. And, you know, I mean, when you get a board packet, that's part of your due diligence, is to investigate that and figure out what's to be done. You know, put Nancy on the spot with a question that has to come back to the board and back and forth, that's the biggest problem that we have with the boards now, is we can't make a decision and you can't move forward because there's too many questions, too many conflicts and all that. Hopefully that's resolved with the new board. But sometimes we gotta take a chance. You know, I'm in support of Develop by Osco, because with the Corridor Improvement Authority, I mean, you're gaining more boards, more committees. We're trying to move forward and gain, you know, more business opportunities, you know, to come to Oscoda. And, you know, I mean, I've seen money thrown away for worse things. And, you know, honestly, I consider it a good investment to be able to move forward with that and try and take advantage of that. And like what was stated before, you know, there's times, if it's not a benefit, you can back out and change your ways. You know, there's times we're not happy with purchases that we make, and, you know, we just deal with it and move on. But I think, you know, as we have more influence and things going on, that, you know, a lot more can change for the community and what we do here. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Comments?
Brian Haley, Oscoda. I welcome Mr. Horny, and I looked at his resume. He's got all the credentials up. It's good that we have a superintendent. I'm looking forward to talk to him and make sure, I'm sure it's there, but that we're fully aware of the OMA law, closed session meetings, anything like that having to do with property. And of course, the DNR Trust Fund Stewardship Clause policy in 95.1. And as long as we're assured of that, I think everything's going to go just fine. Have a good night.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hey, Tom Axel again. First, I want to say, Mr. Horning, welcome. On behalf of the community, we appreciate it. We understand the unique circumstances. It's imperative for the transition from this board to the next board that we have a superintendent. I think your background, your financial background is going to be well received by the community. Kind of touching on the financial background, one thing that is not lost on me, the amount of time this board spent discussing a $7,200 decision for Develop by Osco. Yet in many other instances, there are significant financial decisions in the hundreds of thousands of dollars that are not discussed to that length. Bob, you spoke quite a bit about the impact that it has. As an employer and speaking to other employers, one thing that's unique is these issues that affect us and outside of our community, such as housing, employment, and development, many of the employers, I can tell you from our staff, we have more employees that we staff that don't live in Oscoda Township than actually live in Oscoda Township. You can go to any employer, major employer in the community. Our housing is not enough. So you ask about the impact around our county. I had the unique opportunity of speaking with Chris Martin recently, because I think the next board will have a very different approach than the current board to develop ASCO. As was mentioned a number of times, we are the largest municipality. Cart and horse, Tim, you brought this up. To my understanding, Nancy was appointed because it's by districts. So similar to our voting, they appoint a member from Oscoda County from each of the districts, as well as the major industries, okay? So that's how they do that. If we try to require as a municipality, then each of the other municipalities might as well require that. That's not necessarily fair. There is an apples to oranges comparison, as we are significantly larger. We are the industry driver and the manufacturing driver for the whole county. So I think that's something we will approach very differently moving forward. I just think that the short-sightedness of some of these conversations, it's not lost on many members of the community. We need to have more involvement. We're the largest community. We need to be involved with those conversations and leading those at a county-wide point of view. The second thing is, in terms of what have they done for the community, to my understanding, didn't Manuela, you wrote the grant for PKL for the $250,000? Correct. And you did that through Develop by Osco, correct? Okay. They applied, Develop by Osco did, for a grant from, is it the state of Michigan? For the grant writer for Develop by Osco. And she is fulfilling some of those roles. That brought $250,000 to our neighboring community. You can't tell me that families and individuals that are in need within Oscoda Township are not going to go into a SABO to receive those products, those services, and to benefit from that. We see that in a SABO, which is significantly smaller than us. We've seen that right there. We have somebody sitting right in our audience that is actually affected our community in a positive way. That, for me, is the loss of the big picture perspective that I hope our next board, we have many more conversations and involvement from a county-wide perspective. So, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Seeing none, we'll go to board comment. Ms. McGuire?
I don't have anything.
No? Mr. Taser?
Yeah, I have a couple. First of all, I'd like to address Mr. Gary Osborne's comment and Mr. Maxwell's comments about Develop by Osco. I have done my research on Develop by Osco. I actually sat on the Child Care Coalition to Develop by Osco. I was a member of that for over a year. I'm a member of the Iosco, I'm the vice chairman of the Iosco County Housing Commission. I'm very involved in housing needs. I also sat on the development for the Northeastern Michigan Regional Housing Needs Assessment Committee, and I'm still involved with the regional needs assessment for Region E, which we are a part of. Iosco County is a part of that. My issues with Develop by Osco being part of that are the issues that as a member on the inside, I have not gotten all the answers that I asked through Develop by Osco, and my vote was simply a vote because of that lack of communication from Develop by Osco and my personal involvement. I have an open mind on it. I want to see regional success also. I wouldn't sit on the Regional Housing Needs Assessment if I didn't. I wouldn't sit on the Iosco County Housing Commission if I didn't have strong knowledge about our housing needs. I've been to all of that for years. So I've been, this board knows I've been a driver for housing in our community and through the Planning Commission, through our zoning ordinances. I'm a strong, I just have right now, I don't see developed by Osco in one area. They may be doing excellent things, but I'm not sold yet on the rest. That's all. That's why I voted that way. The other comment that I want to have is Oscoda Rock Fest is coming up September 7th. There's going to be all the proceeds for Oscoda Rock Fest is going to the Veterans Memorial Park Foundation right here in Oscoda. Now, if you've been out there, you've seen the murals and you've seen the War Dog Memorial. Those things, a great amount, about $40,000 of money raised at these rock festivals has gone towards those things at the park. So 100%, these are volunteers that go out there and have been putting this on for the last, it's actually been over 7 years, and we've had, this is the 5th concert that we've had. And come on out, 10 rock bands, the gates open at noon. There's going to be all kinds of vendors there, food vendors, wrestling matches. It's going to be awesome, okay? What goes better than seeing body slams and rock music, okay? So $30 is not bad for a day of entertainment on Furtaw Field on September 7th. Let's all hope for good weather and let's have a great time. I hope it's not mud wrestling.
Yeah. Thank you. Mr. Sutton, you have a comment?
I would just like to wish everyone a safe and happy Labor Day weekend, and also this Thursday is our first Oscoda varsity football game. Come on out and support the team. They're looking great this year, so ready for football. That's all I got.
I'll amen, ready for football myself. Wait. Mr. Spencer?
I'm good, thank you.
Mr. Cummings?
Yeah, just want to say once again, is this working? I'm
Not,
hearing.
not very well.
That's right, it is. Thank you. Yeah, that battery's been dying all night. Sorry. All right, well, once again, I want to say welcome to Mr. Matt Horning. Very much looking forward to having him on board, and can't wait for September 3rd. Tonight's commentary, I really wanted to say thank you to all the folks that came up and spoke from the public. It was great. It's really nice to get feedback. It's nice to hear people listening and to get the participation. Yeah, there is a fair amount of discussion that comes on up here. We've had, over the years, work sessions on Friday morning before the board meeting, where we've gotten together and we try to go through the entire packet, discuss things. It's an open work session, so public are invited. And sometimes the public would attend, but to be honest with you, not very many. And so it sometimes led to public complaining that the topic or the discussion at the board meeting the following Monday, wasn't getting airtime. It's almost like the conversation had been predetermined and all we did was vote. I don't know that that was necessarily always true, but I could see how we could conclude that. The conversations tonight with regard to Develop by Osco had more to do with just not knowing. We didn't have more in the board packet other than just the attachment from Ms. House regarding the reconsideration. There's a question of whether or not we knew everything we were supposed to know to have this discussion. And that's really what this is about. So appreciate everyone wanting to make sure that we're fast and efficient. Sometimes it's just the way the topic unfolds and people have questions. So anyway, and I don't think Ms. House has any bruises from the discussion. I think she did just fine. Anyway, thanks everybody. Back to you, Bill.
Thank you.
Can I have just 1 minute? 1 minute. I forgot to mention that the Lake Theater is giving a benefit for Oscoda Rock Fest Friday and Saturday at 9:30. They will be showing the movie Spinal Tap. This would be awesome for anybody, and all proceeds of that goes to the Rock Fest. So that's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Spinal Tap, huh?
Spinal Tap.
I would like to also welcome Mr. Horning. I think if you've looked at his resume, I think he'll be a great asset for the township, moving through these final days of this board and into the new board coming on. It's going to be a great, he's going to be a great asset for us. There's a situation, a problem has come up having to do with our water main extensions and hooking people up. If you recall, Phase 2, which was run down Loud Drive from roughly from Cedar Lake Road down to Phelan Creek, that was attained through a federal grant. That federal grant did not allow us, did not provide money for hooking up residents. However, once that line was put in, residents that were there that had wells that were concerned about their water paid to have it hooked up. A good number of those residents did not pay to have it hooked up. They were waiting. Now we have made arrangements through our granting agency to cover the cost of connecting those homes that, so up to date, have not been connected, so they can connect for free. The problem is we have not been able to locate money to reimburse people that paid out of their own pocket. I think that's highly unfair. The problem is I don't know where we get the money to do that. My suggestion has been, and I will bring this up, is to approach the Air Force to try and get them to pay for hooking up those homes that need to be reimbursed for what they spent to hook up to the water main on the Phase 2 project on Loud Drive. I don't know exactly how many people there are, so I don't know exactly how much that money accounts for, what the total is on that. But we'll have to find that out and put a list together, and I intend to approach the Air Force to try and get some remuneration on that particular item, because after all, it's the Air Force's fault that we're putting in all these water mains, and we've been fortunate enough to get grants. The big C2R2 grant for a little over $9 million has allowed us to do a lot of these projects, and under that C2 they are covering the cost of connecting residents to the water mains. The requirement is that their wells have to be capped, as I mentioned earlier. So that's an issue that's come up in the township, and I've received a number of emails regarding this situation, and unfortunately I don't have a good answer for people that spent money out of pocket to connect to the water main because they were concerned about their well water regarding the PFAS, which is understandable. So we're continuing to look at the grant agencies and other areas to see if we can come up with money sooner. But like I said, I intend to approach the Air Force and try and put some pressure on them to get some money from them to help cover those costs. Again, I want to welcome Mr. Horning. Wish everybody a safe and happy Labor Day weekend. I hope the weather's going to cooperate, and just everybody be safe out there. So with that, I will call this meeting adjourned.